Alright guys, in this video, let's create and run a Hello World Angular application. For this series, I have created a new folder called Angular, and we will mainly be working within this folder. So let's create our very first Angular application. And for that, we make use of the Angular CLI. Now Visual Studio Code has an integrated terminal from where you can run your commands. So go to View and click on Integrated Terminal. And over here, make sure you're inside the Angular folder. To create a new Angular project, run the command ng new followed by the project name, which in our case is going to be Hello World. So hello-world. The command takes a few minutes to run, but once it completes, you must have a Hello World folder created. Now back in the terminal, run the command cd hello world to navigate inside the project folder, and then run the command ng-serve to run your application. Once we get the message compiled successfully from Webpack, you can go back to your browser and open the URL localhost:4200, and you can see some HTML from the Angular application being displayed. So your very first Angular application up and running by executing just a couple of commands. This is the power of Angular CLI. But of course, it is important to understand how exactly the control flows when you run an Angular application and from where all this HTML is being displayed. So let me go over on a high level Angular's architecture and explain the flow of execution of any basic Angular application. Now the first building block is a module. Angular apps are modular in nature, so an Angular application is just a collection of many individual modules. Every module represents a feature area in your application. For example, we can have a users module that is related to the application users and an admin module that is related to the application administrators. But at the end of the day, an Angular module is just lines of code that can be imported or exported. Keep in mind though, every Angular application has at least one module, which is the root module. And by convention, this is called as the app module. Now each module is in turn made up of components and services. A component controls a portion of the view on the browser. For example, we can have a component for navigation, one for sidebar, and one for the main content. But again, your Angular application will have at least one component which would be the root component of your application. And this is again called the app component by convention. All other components will be nested inside this root component. Each component will have an HTML template to represent the view in the browser and a class that controls the logic of that particular view. Module will also have services, which is basically a class that contains the business logic of your application. In addition to components and services, a module can contain a few more pieces of your Angular application, but for now, components and services will be something we will be focusing a lot in the series. So, to summarize this architecture, Angular apps contain one or more modules. Each module contains one or more components and services. Each component contains an HTML template and a class to control the logic for that particular view. A module can also have services which contains the business logic of your application. The modules export and import code as and when required and finally render the view in the browser. Alright, with this understanding, let's take a look at some of the files in our project folder and how the execution flows. Now back in Visual Studio Code, we have the Hello World project folder. Now there are a lot of files, so I'm going to go over only a few of them that are really important at this stage. The first one is the package.json file. Now this file contains the dependencies and the dev dependencies, which are nothing but the libraries or modules that are required for your Angular application to work. The packages listed here get installed when you run the command ng new hello world, and all the packages get installed inside the node modules folder. We also have some of the scripts that can be executed. The ngserve command is one of them, which runs our application. You can also execute npm start, which will internally call the ngserve command. Alright, next we have the source folder, which is what we will be concerned with most of the time in this series. In this source folder, we have the main.ts file, which is the entry point to our Angular application. We also have the app folder, which contains the file app.module.ts, which is the root module of our application, and also app.component.ts, which is the root component of our application. When we run the command ngserve to start our application, the execution comes to the main.ts file. Over here, we bootstrap or kickstart the app module. In our app module, you can see that we in turn bootstrap or again kickstart the app component. Now this app component has two things, the HTML template and the class to control the view logic. So we have the HTML template over here and the TypeScript file which contains the class that contains the logic or the data for the view. In the class, we have a property title is equal to a string app. And in our HTML, we have welcome to title. But at runtime, this title gets replaced by this property app. And then we also have some other HTML elements that get rendered in the browser. So we have welcome to and then app, which is nothing but the property in the class that gets bound to the HTML template. So we have welcome to app and the rest of the HTML elements. Now back in our app component class, which contains the property title, if I change app to codevolution, save this and head over to the browser, you can see that the browser automatically refreshed and the message welcome to codevolution is now displayed. Well, that is the basic functioning of a Hello World Angular application. When you run the command ngserve, it starts with main.ts, goes to app module, and then goes to app component. The data property title gets rendered in the HTML, which is what you will see in the browser. Now, as I mentioned in the architecture, components represent different portions of view in the browser, and they make up for a major portion of your Angular application. So for the next couple of videos, let's take a more detailed look at components.